on the back.
All right, so usually right after I get seated, someone's going to click in if they want to come in, but we'll see what happens. Okay. Hey, everybody, welcome. Thank you for coming. This is the Eastpointe Movie Critic Discussion Night, and we are doing Quadrophenia, the Who movie from 1979.
Yes, yes.
And oh, just a little reminder, first everyone, please, if you could silence your phones just to make sure.
Good.
So our next time is going to be December 1st, because the fourth Thursday of the month is Thanksgiving, so we're not doing it then. So we'll do it the week after. And then after that, we'll go back to the regular fourth Thursday, which will be in January, so it'll be the 26th. So we've got December 1st, then January 26th. And also even before that, we've got a theater outing, Jersey Boys at the Maltz in Jupiter, and we're going to be doing the matinee on Wednesday, November 9th, and we'll be doing a discussion here at the club around 5 o'clock, depending on how late we get out. All right, and I'll ask if you could to please follow katzreviews.com on Facebook and Twitter. I would appreciate it. I'm Ed Katz, and of course, what did I tell you, right? Somebody's coming in. Never fails. All right, here we go. Okay. All right, for those of you who don't know, I was a theater and film critic for WICC Radio in Connecticut for a couple of years. All right, so let's start on Quadrophenia. All right, show of hands. Who liked the movie? So, okay. Okay. All right, okay. Who didn't like it? Lot did not like it. Okay, and who was so-so? Lori, so-so? Okay. All right. Okay, I'm going to start with those. Well, I want to get to the ending also, of course. We got to get to the ending. But I'll give you a little background, then we'll get into why and why you didn't like it.
Best part.
All right, so the movie has a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was just 13 critics, but 100%, a score of 83% from audiences. And the New York Times placed the film on its best 1,000 movies ever list. It was released September of 1979, budget of just under $2 million, which translates to just under $12 million today, equivalent value. And at the box office, it did a little over 18 million, which translates to 135 million. So it's a big hit. But even though it did pretty well in America, in England, this was huge, huge. All right, the New York Times gave a review, and Janet Maslin, who ended up later becoming their book critic, but she was their #1 film critic for many years, called it, quote, gritty and ragged and sometimes quite beautiful, creating a slice of life movie that feels tremendously authentic in its sentiments as well as its details. Maslin states that the director's scenes of the youth battles, quote, capture a fierce, dizzying excitement that epitomizes a kind of youthful extreme, unquote. And wait till I tell you about the cast. So in America, we had James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. We had Marlon Brando in The Wild One, and as films about teenage youth angst in the 50s and 60s. And also we had American Graffiti that launched many actors' careers. That was obviously the 60s. But in England, they had this movie, and it was kind of all of those rolled into one for them. It really launched so many careers, and wait till you hear about the cast. I mean, none of them. I mean, Phil Daniels, who knows Phil Daniels in America, right? Pretty much nobody. He was Jimmy. Leslie Ash was the female lead, Steph. Nobody knows her here, but in England, huge. Wait till I give you the story. And then the other one that was kind of interesting, the character of Monkey. You remember the girl Monkey? Who danced a lot, and she kind of had a crush on Jimmy. She became really big in the punk rock scene, kind of post-punk, and also as an actress and presenter in England. She had hit records, and she was pretty big. And then, of course, Sting was almost a nobody when this movie was filmed. By the time it came out, the Police started to get big. So they increased his billing on the posters, and actually put a little. I have one. I think I brought it. Let's see.
Sting was the blonde.
Sting was the ace face. Yes.
Mhm.
The lead singer of the Police.
Fields of gold.
Not in the movie.
Wait a minute, I wanna get that.
It is blonde.
Yeah,
The
all right.
belt-
You're not gonna be able to see it here, but right in the corner here, it lists Sting, and they put a little square around it to kind of highlight it. So in the movie poster. So the album cover was very dark. If I mean, I had the album. I don't know if anyone else had it, but you can see it's a picture of a guy. You don't see him from the face, but you see he's got the jacket that says the Who on it. He's got that motor scooter, and that's the front of the album cover. Here's the back of the album cover with the bike in the water.
At the end.
Right, right. So I thought that was kind of interesting because I didn't remember that as being the back of the album cover. I did remember though that there were liner notes that took up. It was a double album that took up both pages of both sides of the album, and I printed them out. It's what it is. It's really lengthy, but what it is the story of this from Jimmy's perspective, like he's narrating his perspective on everything that happened to him. So that's what the liner notes are, telling Jimmy's story, just from Jimmy's perspective. Now, the director, Frank Roddam, he was really a documentary filmmaker, and I think you could see that in the way the fight scenes were done. It really looked documentary style. It kind of actually reminded me of Battle of Algiers, if anyone remembers when we had that discussion, how realistic that was. And that was also made to look a lot like a documentary. So, this was his first feature film because he had been working in documentaries, and I was trying to find out how he ended up getting hired for this. And Pete Townsend had some affinity for him from maybe a documentary he made or something, and that helped get it to happen. But he won awards for his BBC documentaries, which none of them I ever heard because they were in England only. But he also, let's see. Oh, he was also founder and chairman of ZG Publishing. ZIGI, whose many titles include The Last Templar. You familiar with that book?
No.
It sold over 5 million copies worldwide. It was his company that published it. He made other movies after this, and interestingly, he made the movie The Bride, not a great movie, kind of a weird take on The Bride of Frankenstein, in 1985, so 6 years later, with Sting and Phil Daniels, and one of the other minor characters in this movie was also cast in it. And he did The Lords of Discipline. Not too many other big movies, but he had really big TV shows that he created. Wait till you hear this one. Ever heard of The Master Chef?
Yes.
Frank Roddam, the guy who directed this movie, that was his brainchild. So he was the format creator and executive producer. He also did a show that ran almost 20 years in England called Auf Wiedersehen's Pet. I don't know anything about it, except it ran for almost 20 years in England. It was huge.
Didn't come here.
No, right? I'm surprised if it ran 20 years, they would have brought it here, but they didn't. All right, and he did a lot of commercials for Shell, Campbell Soups, BP Oil, the London's The Observer. So, and he did public service announcements, things like that. So he's had a very busy career, but all right, so let's get to, because there's a one, I want to tell you about the cast, but I also want to get back to the origin of the movie, which really was the record album. But okay, so for someone who didn't like the movie, please shed light on what your thoughts were. Anyone want to speak up?
Why we didn't like it?
Yes.
Confusion,
Confusion.
difficult to understand.
Well, I did recommend putting the
It
subtitles
came-
on.
The movie came with it,
Okay, yeah.
at least mine did.
Yeah, mine did too.
And I mean, I understand it was Jimmy's life, and he was a really confused kid, more than confused,
More than confused, right?
and confused. And there were gangs, and that was the thing, and there was stuff pills to take, and gangs, and
It was depressing.
The mods,
That's depressing.
the mods and
The rockers.
the
Mods and the rockers,
Mods
yep.
and the
But I
rockers.
liked the music, but I thought it was disjointed from the film.
Okay, so did anyone see Tommy?
Yeah,
Okay, the movie, which was like way over the top.
Yeah.
And how this was much more realistic compared to what a fantasy thing that was.
right. But you didn't find the music disjointed from the,
Well, that's what I'm going to, because it was used differently. Here, it was used as a background soundtrack for the most part, whereas in Tommy, it was a musical movie over the top with the songs being almost mini music videos, essentially, trying to integrate it into the plot, you know, but I still, just my big memory of that is Anne Margaret covered in baked beans.
Baked beans.
That's a famous one.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I was thinking.
But were there basically 4 songs that were the important songs?
Well, that's an interesting point, and I'm not sure I have the details on it,
I'm
but,
not talking
so-
about the beginning,
right, no,
that sound wave.
right.
But
Well, let me get to the album for a second, which is the source material, because that goes to a lot of all
The
this.
songs in the movie do not come in the same order.
No, not at all. Right, and there were some parts that were used again and again in different ways.
Love Reign Over Me was the one that was used.
Right.
Do you feel that it went with the scene? You know, that the music went with what was going on?
Who could tell?
Okay, so if you don't, okay, yes, all the songs fit in really well with the scene, but if you don't
You gotta
know the
project so they can
song,
hear, David.
what? Okay, if you don't know the song, then you don't know the words to the song, so you don't understand why they're playing that song at that time.
That being said, near the end of the movie, when he was about to go over the cliff,
Right.
I told Ruth, going over the cliff.
I didn't go.
Well,
We'll discuss that, we'll get to that.
US body wasn't there. It was
Well,
only the body.
But I will tell you one thing, so when I saw the movie when I was younger, obviously, because I'm a big Who fan, there were no subtitles, okay? And
Right.
I don't remember having trouble understanding what was going on. Now, there's no way you understood, because even if you've been to England, you don't know what the hell they're talking about. Like, we can't even watch Downton Abbey now without the title.
Yep, I'm with you, I'm with
So
you.
it's not them, okay, but, because they speak different words and things like that. But you could tell what was going on just from what was happening on
I
the
had words.
screens.
Yeah.
What?
I had all the
No, but I'm
words.
saying, when I saw this in
Oh.
1978, you know, as
Nine.
college,
Yeah,
You
Um,
knew what was going on.
there were no subtitles in the
Right,
movie, but
right.
you kind of knew what was going on. I didn't walk out thinking, no, I didn't understand what was going on.
Because what you were living through at that time wasn't so far different.
Yeah.
no, but
Than what
the
they
accents
were
were so heavy.
Yeah, it was
But
the
you're
same
right,
voice.
but you could understand the milieu of
The
what was
gangs
happening.
and-
Well, just from these scenes, what
Yeah,
was
but the
going
scene,
on.
without
right?
the
You knew what
words.
was
You
going
didn't
on.
Without
need
the
the
words,
words.
right.
It was almost like
Right.
it didn't need words to
Right.
understand what was happening.
Yeah.
All right, well, so here's the info I want to give you the info on the album. In 2003, the album, which came out again, and it's actually 72 or 3, was ranked number 266 on Rolling Stone magazine's list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. IGN, which is a British, at the time publication, now it's still on media, and it's entertainment and reviews, it placed Quadrophenia at number 1 on their list of the greatest classic rock albums of all time. Number 2 was Let It Bleed by the Rolling Stones. Number 3, Sgt. Pepper. Number 4 was Led Zeppelin's House of the Holy. And number 5 was The Low Spark of High Hill Boys by Traffic. But what they wrote on Quadrophenia was, where Tommy laid out the definitive blueprint for the rock opera, Quadrophenia improved upon it by leaps and bounds. This is, without a question, doubt, or any argument whatsoever, the Who's crowning achievement as a band. Every single song bristles with emotion, both raw and introspective. Pete Townsend's songwriting is at its peak, as is his guitar playing and singing. Roger Daltrey steps up to the plate and slams out some searing vocal emotion. Meanwhile, both John Entwistle, the bass player, and Keith Moon, the drummer, proved they were one of the best rhythm duos of their or anybody's day. There's no need to list all the songs here, since each and every one is a classic. If you don't own this album, it causes one to query, what's wrong with you? Seriously. That's their review. So I love the album. I think it was the Who's best album. And one of my all-time favorite concerts, and I've literally seen maybe 300 concerts, maybe more. I've seen the Who 5 times, and my favorite one was when they did the entire album Quadrophenia, start to finish, took a break, came back, and did some other greatest hits. Phenomenal concert.
Now everyone knows why we had to watch the movie.
Yeah.
But we haven't had a musical. We hadn't had a musical.
It
so I
was
must
an
have that one.
education. It was definitely an education. It's
Okay.
something I never would have seen.
Right, okay. Well, also, there's, and I have to give credit to Amy Rubin, who couldn't be here, but she did send me an email. And where are my notes on it? I had it. She mentioned that it reminded her of West Side Story, Sharks and the Jets, right? Which was kind of interesting. With the band thing and the sort of the romance, but a little different on that because it was more internal. But I gotta find it. It's in here somewhere. I'll get to it.
We liked West Side Story.
Okay. All right. And
That was a music.
now Roger Daltrey was interviewed, and David, you sent me a clip of some of the documentaries which I watched, and somebody else did too. Roger Daltrey was interviewed in one of them. I don't remember which one, and he was upset that Saturday Night Fever had come out a little before this movie. And the reason he was upset was he said he thought that people are going to think we nicked from that movie, meaning, stole from it. And he said, but we've been working on this for years. We didn't nick it from them. So they asked what he thought of Saturday Night Fever. He goes, I thought it was good. He goes, the music's a bit twee, the Bee Gees. So he says, our movie's better. It's going to be, they were in the middle of filming it when he was interviewed. So it's going to be better. We've got a better plot. So, and he said, of course, he says our music's better. Pete Townsend said he thinks the album Quadrophenia is the best thing they've ever done. And at the time, he said he didn't think they would ever top it. So, and he's the one who wrote it. So I thought that was pretty significant too.
What else can he do?
Well, but they've had many albums since. So, but nothing to this degree. It was also praised as being a concept album, and there was one critic on one of the documentaries who said he thought this was the last great concept album. I would say The Wall might have had that. There was another one, Pink Floyd, The Wall, but this was obviously a terrific one. So Billboard's review, I want to give you some of this. And interestingly enough, the album was released on October 26th, yesterday, in 1973. So 49 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the Who released their biggest and best rock opera, Quadrophenia, spanning 4 sides. The album tells the story of a disillusioned working class mod. Mod, by the way, does anyone know what mod means? That's what I would have thought.
What means what?
It's actually an acronym for mode of dress.
Oh, yeah.
Mode of dress. So the mods were the ones who dressed slick, and the rockers were the ones who dressed, like grease monkeys.
Yeah.
That being said, why were they
Yeah.
willing to go out and ruin their clothes fighting? And,
Right, good
I
question.
mean,
Yeah, I don't
they
know.
respect, that was a big.
They're getting them
thing.
tailored and everything, and there they are
Yeah,
fighting.
how
in it,
well
right.
you looked at them,
Right.
go out and do that stuff.
So the album tells the story of a disillusioned working class mod while probing the inner psychology of the band's guitarist and songwriter Pete Townsend. The main character, Jimmy, is emblematic of the youth culture that spawned the band itself. He rides a GS scooter, and there was a little sideline about GS scooter. You saw the guy who had the GS scooter in the film was Sting, right?
The really fancy.
The
Yeah,
fancy
yeah.
one.
The silver one. Does anyone know Sting's real name? David, you gotta
Do
know.
you
this.
know?
No.
I know Craig, if Craig was here, he'd know it. Gordon Sumner.
Huh?
GS. But no, it had nothing to do with that. It was actually Vespa's designation for a Grand Sport version of the scooter. So anyway, so Jimmy pops amphetamines and spoils for fights. But Townsend's character begins to unravel, finding no relief from drink, drugs, or his shrink, which they didn't show in the movie. And unable to blend into his surroundings, Jimmy sails away and lies down on a rock by the seaside, contemplates death, and finds spiritual redemption. Townsend, a self-described victim of abuse as a boy, he's talked openly about that, has used the canvas of a rock album to explore his traumas and insecurities. But if their first rock opera, Tommy, was a quirky patchwork of songs that hid darker hues, Quadrophenia kicked open a door into Townsend's mind. Each member of The Who was equally critical to bringing his feelings to the light. Singer Roger Daltrey, the most authentic mod of them all back in the mid-60s. You can pass around this picture. You see Roger Daltrey's the singer with the, as usual, bare-chested. Hollered identity crisis anthems like The Real Me and The Punk and the Godfather like it was the end of the world. Bassist John Entwistle put his orchestral abilities to work, the triumphal horn parts on jams like 515 are his. I didn't know John Entwistle was a great horn player, but he was terrific. And I saw him in concert, but I don't remember him playing the horns.
He's the real one, the real singer.
Right, right. Their outrageous drummer Keith Moon turned what could have become a pretentious high art document into a sustained explosion. The title of Quadrophenia doesn't just refer to, as Townsend described it, a naive understanding of schizophrenia. The album's division into quarters was also supposed to represent the personalities of the Who themselves, the 4 band members. Helpless Dancer is called Roger's theme. It's an acidic little vignette with Townsend stabbing the piano and roaring about the ills of society. Quote, bombs dropped on fighting cats and children's dreams are run with rats. That would sum up Jimmy and Daltrey both, tough guys with strong consciences. All right, I won't get into all the rest of it. Okay, yeah, at 5:15, the song 5, one of my favorite moments in the movie is when towards the end, Jimmy is on the train and he can't find a seat anywhere. He's all filled up. He's looking all like his eyes are kind of wild. And he ends up sitting between 2 stuffy banker types. And they're looking at him and he's looking at them while they're playing Out of My Brain on the train on the 5:15. Okay, at this point, we all know about Jimmy's alienation from the status quo, but where it's come from exactly. His point of view is well explained in the song The Dirty Jobs, in which Jimmy observes the neighborhood men who, quote, look after the pigs, unquote, and drive a local bus, unquote, in order to butter their bread. Quote, ain't it funny how we all seem to look the same, they crow. Like Marlon Brando slurring, what do you got, when questioned about his motivation to rebel in 1953's The Wild One, Jimmy sees resisting grim working class conformity as an operating principle, anything but this. Okay, Townsend detailed in the liner notes how Bellboy, the song Bellboy, where he sees Sting, is
What was
actually a
that
bellboy.
about?
So how it represents a crossroads for Jimmy. He meets an old ace face, Townsend wrote, and referring to the leader of the mods, who's now a bellhop at the very hotel the mods tore up. Then, as the story goes, Jimmy exiles himself, feeling let down by his rebellious old leader going soft and servile. Regardless of the dramatic arc, Bellboy, also called Keith's theme, because Keith Moon was the one who did the vocal narration on it, is full of fun moments, especially Co-singer Moon's ridiculous Cockney impression when describing the bellboy's menial life. I gotta keep running now, keep my lip buttoned down. Remember when he was doing that? So that was Keith Moon's voice doing that. All right, and then some more on the album and how it motivated the character, or informed us as to the character's thinking. The Real Me, a psychological rocker from the vantage point of a therapist's couch. The Real Me boils down to a central theme of Quadrophenia, identifying your true self in an indifferent, uncomprehending world. Daltrey is in blazing confrontational form on the mic, taking Townsend's inward-looking poetry, quote, the cracks between the paving stones look like rivers of flowing veins, and lobbing it like a missile. In the context of Jimmy's story, the Real Me indicts every major figure in his world. The preacher, the shrink, his mother and father, all fail to understand his true self. It boils over at the very end. Daltrey lets loose his finest scream, this side of won't get fooled again. These are fighting words. And then the one I think is their masterpiece on this is Love Reign O'er Me. Nothing the listeners previously heard on Quadrophenia can steal him or her for its resplendent closer, Love Reign O'er Me. It wraps up Jimmy's spiritual journey with a question mark. Does Jimmy find last-minute solace or a new lease on life through the power of love? Whichever the case, it's their most overtly spiritual song without becoming hectoring or tiresome. All dynamics, all atmosphere, and Daltrey's lead vocal is pure Godhead. Townsend later said the Who would never make another work the caliber of Quadrophenia, and there's some truth to that. If this is really the last call for the Who at their explosive brainy peak, then what a finish. All right, so that was Billboard. Now, the other thing, to transition to the movie came out in '79. Almost exactly a year before it was released, Keith Moon died. That profoundly affected the members of the band. And they really, Townsend said in an interview that the movie was very tough to make. He said the album was tough to make and the movie was tough to make. The album was tough to make because there was all this internal strife. They were ready to sue their manager because they thought he was stealing from them. That Roger Daltrey was ready to punch the guy out. Pete Townsend initially thought he was wrong, then he looked into it, he said, so there was some heavy stuff going on with that. And he said, just getting the album made was kind of a winning a battle. But then when the movie came, they were dealing with the death of their member Keith Moon, who, by the way, was one of the most brilliant drummers ever in rock. I mean, people say John Bonham was great from Led Zeppelin. Well, to me, he was a basher. He kind of did everything the same way. He was great at it, but he did everything the same way. Keith Moon could play the soft stuff as well as the real hard stuff. Oh yeah, so here's the other ones. I got my Amy note. So Amy Rubin said West Side Story, Grease, and In the Heights. It reminded her of also. So I could see Grease to a certain extent, and then with the romance issue back and forth, and then In the Heights.
We all have romance.
Yeah, but there were so few female characters in this. There was the mother, Steph, and Monkey, and to a lesser extent, Jimmy's sister, who had like very little part. So, but that was it. There were basically 4 females in the whole movie. Okay, so all right, I have some notes here, but I wanted to give you some background on the character, the actors, because there's such an incredible story with all of them. I told you about the director Frank Roddam. Phil Daniels. He was born in '58. English actor, musician, and singer, most noted for playing in Quadrophenia. Also, he played in something called a British big hit called Scum. Let's see, nothing else we would really recognize here. He is known for, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the British band Blur. Oasis is like the #1 band in England other than the Beatles and the Stones. Blur was right underneath Oasis. Anyway, Blur's biggest hit was a song called Parklight. In it, there is a narration. Like if you remember Paradise by the Dashboard Lights with Phil Rizzuto narrating the play-by-play. Phil Daniels did the narration on this Parklight song. Again, huge hit in England. And it's very comical. It's very comical if you ever want to look it up. It's a lot of fun. He also played a waiter in Bugsy Malone when he was a kid. Where else? Oh, in the movie, an animated movie, Chicken Run, that I know our kids saw. He played the voice of Fletcher, the dull-witted rat in the animated movie. He was in Celebrity Mastermind, and he also had a rock band, and he appeared on stage with the band Blur in several big concerts, like huge Hyde Park and Glastonbury festivals. And he wrote a movie called Vinyl in 2012, not the HBO TV series. He not only starred in, but he wrote and performed most of the film's music soundtrack, directed by Sarah Sugarman. It's the story of an aging rock group forced to con the music industry to gain radio play of future recorded record releases. And it was based on true events based by the 80s band The Alarm that took place in the UK back in 2004. You remember The Alarm? No? All right. They weren't nearly as big as The Who, but they had a couple of hits. Okay, he's done a lot of theater. So for theater, I highlighted it in green. Now I almost can't read it. He did in theater. He did True West, Sam Shepard's play, Carousel, The Merchant of Venice, Measure for Measure, The Jew of Malta, A Clockwork Orange, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead, Antony and Cleopatra, and Les Mis. So he's done a lot in England. He's even making things now. Now, here's the really crazy one. Leslie Ash, who played Steph. She was born in London. She went to Italia Conti Academy stage school in the late 70s. She started out as a fashion model. Before long, she transitioned to acting, winning her first role as Jill Page in the short-lived TV series Chico the Rainmaker. Again, this is British stuff. But she was at age 4, she started in TV commercials. And after this, she also appeared in an Iron Maiden music video and a Dire Straits music video. She was in a movie where she played a Miss United Kingdom competitor. And she was best known for playing Neil Morrissey's romantic interest, Deborah, or Debs, in the situation comedy Men Behaving Badly. That it ran several years in England, had a brief run in America. They kind of remade it here. And she also released a single called Tell Him under the name Quentin and Ash with another woman, and it reached number 25 in the UK singles chart. Okay. In May of 2008, she worked with Transparent Television to make a documentary about the unregulated cosmetic beauty industry while exploring her own experiences. The program, Leslie Ash Face to Face, was broadcast on ITV in 2008. She was a contestant in 2014 on the BBC program Celebrity Master Chef, again, created by Frank Roddam. And there were some of her other Quadrophenia co-stars were in it as well. She married a former footballer, Lee Chapman, a big British soccer player. And she appeared in some places with her sister. But here's where it gets really interesting. She contracted toxoplasmosis.
Yes.
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
that is.
So that is
You get it from Katz.
From Katz.
Katz. Oh, okay. Well, it's from 2 months into her pregnancy.
Oh my God.
During your pregnancy.
Right. And
Ooh, it's
she
terrible.
wished to raise awareness of it in England. She was hospitalized at the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital in April 2004 after suffering 2 cracked ribs. She was discharged a few days later, but was readmitted after losing all feeling in her legs. In June 2004, while she was still in the hospital, it was announced that a Staphylococcus aureus infection might have rendered her permanently unable to walk. In January 2007, she confirmed she was suing the hospital. Papers lodged at the High Court asserted that she would never return to active TV roles. The hospital admitted breach of duty over part of her treatment, but denied responsibility for the extent of her injuries. In January 2008, they paid out a record £5 million compensation in an out-of-court settlement. The chief executive in England of the NHS Litigation Authority said the payout set a new record for compensation following a hospital-acquired infection. The previous high amount was 1/10 of it, was 500,000. The payment was justified, they said, by being, quote, because the amount Leslie was earning at the time she fell ill and takes into account how much she might have earned in the future. Wait, her health issues don't stop there. In her 30s, she had a collagen injection to plump up her lips. When she was 40, she decided to repeat the procedure with the same plastic surgeon, the mother of a Venezuelan friend. However, in the second procedure, liquid silicone was injected, resulting in extreme swelling of her lips, a condition dubbed as trout pout in the press. Subsequent medical analysis showed the silicone had set and the condition is permanent. During this time, she started a series of ads for the DIY chain Homebase. I don't know that. And she evoked further ridicule from the media about her appearance. She has since spoken out about the press ridicule she received as a result of her botched implants, commenting, if I'd lost a leg in a car crash, people wouldn't have felt able to take the mickey out of me so mercilessly. People don't laugh at Heather Mills because she lost a leg. So she and her husband sued News of the World for breach of privacy over, this is another thing, over suspicions of their voicemails and those of their sons were illegally accessed by a private investigator. They wrote to the police over their suspicions. The police informed them there were 4 pieces of paper referring to her in this private investigator's notebooks and 5 items relating to her husband and 2 about their kids. In August 2011, she and her husband settled the claim against the paper and the investigator for an undisclosed sum and received an apology. They plan to take action against other newspapers. So she's made a fortune with lawsuits.
Yeah.
Okay, now the one who played Monkey, Toya Ann Wilcox, English musician, actress, TV presenter, and a career spanning more than 40 years. She's had 8 top 40 singles, released over 20 albums, written 2 books. She was the one who played Monkey.
What was that?
That was the girl who was like
That
on
was
foot,
what
right?
she
She
said.
wanted to be like.
She wanted to be
girlfriend.
Jimmy's girlfriend. She was trying to help him out, and when he would go kind of crazy, she tried to defend him until finally at the end, she kind of couldn't. Okay. She fronted a band called Toya, her first name, before embarking on a solo career. She was nominated for the British Breakthrough Act, Best Female Solo Artist. She was nominated for other things. She had hit singles, including It's a Mystery, Thunder in the Mountains, and I Want to Be Free. She married, in 1986, the musician Robert Fripp, founder and guitarist of King Crimson, which is a big British progressive rock group. The couple have no children, have an arranged will, so they leave their entire fortune to establish a musical education trust for children. She also was invited to make a speech in the presence of Diana, Princess of Wales, expressing her views on the subject of how being disabled incites creativity and craving for a fuller life experience. Okay. She got an honorary doctorate by the University of Central England in recognition of her achievements in performing arts, media, and broadcasting. And in 2001, Q magazine named her number 48 in their 100 greatest women in music poll, as voted by readers of the magazine. So she became a big deal too. So I thought, it's pretty interesting. All these people, like we had American Graffiti launch 1 million careers, including Harrison Ford, and really kind of make Ron Howard big too, and then he went into directing. But
Are we ever gonna talk about if he dies?
Let's
at
talk
the end
about
of the
the
movie?
movie.
Let's talk about the
Okay.
movie.
all right.
Let's
15
talk
minutes.
about the
All right.
movie.
So, all right. So who thinks he died at the end? Show of hands. Nobody thinks he died?
No.
Couple maybe? Okay.
No,
No. Okay. And why not?
because there was no body.
Okay.
I mean, the bike was there without a body, and he
Right.
just went off and somehow got something together. Don't ask me what. but
Okay.
No, but the very start of the movie, he's walking back from the cliff. I mean, that's the very start.
Well, was it the
Yeah.
cliff? I was going to talk about that because the opening shot, you see the water right behind him though.
Right.
Yeah,
So it didn't look like he was elevated above it. And that was a pretty high cliff.
Ah,
It
that
was just like
quite
he
a
was coming
cliff.
away from the beach.
Right.
So I wasn't sure about that because I thought that same thing. Like, is that
Yeah.
from the cliff? He's walking away from the cliff? No, I don't think so because the perspective was too low.
Oh, so it
He
wasn't
came
that.
pretty close though.
Yes.
When on that drive, you didn't know what was happening.
Right.
It kept going and going, and
Well, and I love that because they didn't have drones at the time, so it was helicopter shots where he's going this way and the helicopter's going over land and then goes over him and over the sea,
yeah.
kind of, little foreboding there. Like, is he
That
gonna go
was
over the cliff?
interesting, 'cause
And
you
then
really
the
didn't
music
know,
at that
is he
point
going
was
to do it or
Right,
not?
the music was kind of implying it as well. Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Unless the body went that way and
Okay.
Right.
it's a
So-
possibility.
So it says here, despite the slightly ambiguous
you
ending,
know.
director Frank Roddam, Phil Daniels, and several other cast members all agree Jimmy does not commit suicide at the end.
Yeah.
He more likely abandons mod life and drifts into a more conforming and conventional adult existence.
Right.
I think that's what it means, when he leaves, when
He
that
says
goes
goodbye to the
over,
bike.
the
Yeah.
bike goes,
Right.
it's the end of that life.
It's
Yes.
over.
It's symbolic of
I
that.
thought-
But interestingly, remember what he had lost, and I had it written
But
down. I
that was
hope
the
I have
best
it all
part of
here.
the movie.
Because it was
Okay.
the end.
The best part of the movie is when he sees him working as a bellboy.
That was good.
Right,
That
he
was
sees
good.
bellboy.
And that's
He
when
was-
it
He was
all-
disillusioned.
Disillusioned.
Yes, he was very disillusioned. And he's
Okay.
really
I
not as
liked it the
cool.
best.
He's not as cool as.
So he lost his job, he lost his girlfriend,
Right.
he lost his motorcycle,
And his mother.
his mother kicked him out of the house.
That was terrible.
And he even lost his clothes because he threw them out on the plane when he was all, on the train when he was all filled up. So he essentially, and I'll go back to the other movie we saw, with Jack Nicholson, right? Who
Oh, that one.
left his wallet,
Oh, yeah,
left
yeah.
his jacket,
Yeah.
and has nothing, and he takes a ride up north in,
Yeah.
I'm forgetting the title of the
Five
movie.
Easy Pieces.
Five Easy Pieces, thank you, right.
Very good.
What's the name
So,
of it?
Five Easy
Easy Pieces, that was the movie we
Oh,
had
Five
last
Easy
month.
Pieces.
Yeah.
So here,
Yeah, we watched
Jimmy he's got some money left, but not much, and he's got no clothes, nothing, he's got nothing. So, you don't know how he's gonna
I
get it
wondered,
together, but.
his mother didn't let him back in, but he appeared in a new jacket. And I was going, where'd he get those clothes? He couldn't go
Well,
back
he
home.
he sneaked in when they left, and
Oh.
grabbed his clothes, that's when he had the bag.
Oh.
But I don't, he threw it out the train, so I don't know what happened
It
there.
was almost like a rebirth.
Right, right,
He shed everything and he came into it naked,
right.
right?
Started off. from-
Started off
from-
to start a
from
new
birth.
life.
And
a new
still
life.
talking about the ending for a second here. Do you remember the song that they played at the end?
Over me.
Love Rain Over Me, but
Me?
that's not the actual last one. That's right before it.
Isn't
The
it?
last one is actually Dr. Jimmy and Mr. Jim,
Dr. Jimmy.
which is one of the Who songs.
So which is
But
he?
it's like kind of a riff on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde,
Oh.
right? Can you see that now?
How
So
do
there's
how do you know
two-
that?
People.
I didn't know that.
That's Dr. Jimmy and Mr. I mean, it's totally Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's because he's got the two sides of
Yes,
him.
No, but
two
once
sides.
again,
And the line in the song is,
Yeah.
if you didn't know the whole album by heart, you wouldn't know
You would
that
know
Yeah.
that.
at the
Right.
time. There's too
Yeah.
much going on.
Yeah, yeah.
he says, he
Right.
only comes out when I drink my gin. They only had one quick scene of him
Right.
drinking gin. It was on the train when he's taking his pills, he's drinking a bottle of gin. They just kind of threw it in there. But but that's the line, that he's at least a schizophrenic personality, maybe the, quadrophenia, whatever. And the pills he's taking is dexedrine, it's amphetamine. You could obviously talk about it more, but all the blues he was taking were dexedrine.
So he
What are
really
the
didn't,
blues?
Dexedrine,
The drug he was
the
taking.
amphetamine.
so he really didn't have a girlfriend.
No,
He wanted that girl.
Well,
didn't
he
He
liked
wanted
that
And
girl.
my wife Lori got
That-
very,
that
very,
broke his
very
heart.
upset when she
Yeah.
had sex with him and then blew him off.
that
in
was,
the
that was
alleyway.
terrible.
She said she just broke Jimmy's heart. She
She
got
just,
very upset.
she broke his heart.
Well, what do you think of the character of Steph?
Oh, a slut.
She was the girl of the group.
But
She was just sleeping with
She was
everyone.
pretty, she was young. By the way,
That
when
was the
did,
time, sex,
Right.
drugs, and rock and roll.
I guess.
when did, so you don't get a baby? When did that start? When did you get it?
Birth control?
Birth control.
Well, that was a big, this is in the seventies.
So is that before
There
or
was
at the
birth
same
control.
No, there was
time?
no birth
At
control.
that
Yeah.
time?
Yeah.
So that was part of it.
well, wait a minute, it
They
actually
were
was the
all going
60s.
around.
Well, that's what fueled the sexual revolution.
Right,
It's
that's
called
right.
birth
That's what
control.
you-
Right.
They were all going around. It was freedom.
Right, but he thought it meant something to
Yeah,
her.
yeah.
Right.
And she was just, he basically told him, no,
Her,
no.
her
this is
line
just
was,
fun,
it
we're
was
having
just
fun."
a giggle.
Right.
Right, that was her line. She used it a couple of
That
times.
She was with another guy.
She was
anyway.
with-
She was
She went with his
Well,
friend.
the one she ended up
His
with,
friend.
did you see Dave? Was
His best friend.
The
supposedly his
one who
best friend.
saved her out of the group at
Right.
the end.
Right, Dave.
That was
So-
his best friend.
Now, when I went back and watched it again, there were 3 instances where Jimmy is talking and walking with Steph, and Dave comes in to say hi, and he interjects himself in between them just to say hi, and then he goes away. But it was foreboding that he's gonna be the one to come in between them.
Mhm.
So I thought, cinematically, that was kind of an
It's always the
interesting.
best friend.
It's
Yeah,
his
right?
best friend.
Now, here's a couple things.
Did that happen to you?
No.
That,
Something I don't know
that
about.
Leslie Ash who played Steph, in the original script, the sex scene between Jimmy and Steph took place in a basement and detailed that she would be shown naked. Leslie Ash made it clear she wouldn't do nudity even if it meant losing the part. In the end, the producers agreed to shoot the scene clothed and change the location to the alleyway. That's not the only thing she changed.
She looked uncomfortable.
They wanted her to cut her hair, kind of like Monkey had her hair.
Oh.
And she said, nope, not doing it. And I frankly think it was better that she didn't
I don't
because it
blame her.
distinguished her
Different.
I don't
from,
blame
right,
her.
she looked
She looked
different.
different.
Right, I mean, she
And her
was
hair looked pretty.
obviously very pretty,
Stupid
but
to
it
cut
looked,
her hair.
yeah, it looked different, right. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Okay, how are we on time? All right, we're getting towards there. All right, I've got a whole bunch
Did
of,
it get better in the conversation?
Yes,
What?
yes.
The movie-
I enjoyed
The movie
discussing the
gets
movie.
better in the conversation.
all right, well, there's, like I said, there's a lot to it. So, yeah, Sting and the band, The Police, were little known when the film was shot, but had broken out by the time it was released. Oh, this is interesting. One of the documentary things, they're interviewing Roger Daltrey when he talked about Saturday Night Fever. He was, at the time they were interviewing him, he was on the set auditioning bands to be the in-house club band that they were showing. And they asked him how that was going. And he said, I had to tell one band they were too good. Couldn't hire. He said, what we need for this scene is a mediocre band that could be made out of high school kids, that put a band together. That's what we need. He said, we had this band, and the woman said, can you tell us the name? He goes, sure, the Straight Eight. I never heard of him. He goes, but these guys are fantastic. He goes, they're gonna make it, okay? So I looked them up. They actually did kind of make it. They got on a record label. Pete Townsend signed them to his record label, and they put out 4 albums. They actually opened a European tour for Queen. So that's pretty cool. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I watched a couple videos of them. They were actually pretty good. So yeah, so he said some bands were too good. We wanted an average kid band playing a club. Straight Eight, they're fantastic. They're going to make it. And Pete Townsend's record label was called Eel Pie Records. Okay. Yeah, that's it. All right. Okay. The scene in the pie shop where Jimmy goes for a bite of pie, mash, and liquor was shot inside A. Cook's Pie and Mash Shop on Gold Hawk Road in Shepherd's Bush. The Who began their career in Shepherd's Bush, performing their early gigs at a place called the Gold Hawk Social Club. Now, wait till you hear who was originally supposed to play Jimmy. Johnny Rotten of the Sex Pistols, John Lydon. was originally going to play Jimmy. Supposedly, he nailed his audition and was great. The reason he didn't get it is the company financing the film refused to insure him for the part because of his reputation as being destroying everything. So they wouldn't cast him. They had to get somebody else, and that's when they got
I
Phil
actually
Daniels.
have-
Jimmy
actually
was so
have-
ugly.
I was just thinking that.
Jimmy?
He was so ugly.
He was so
He
ugly.
was.
Well, he's supposed to be
Yeah.
Pete Townsend's
I was just
He's a
thinking.
doppelganger.
He's a teenager.
I swear, I was just thinking that.
He had that long lock.
Had a long face, the big ears.
He
I
was.
wonder why they made him, of all things, such.
Well-
Well, that he's supposed to be not good looking. He's supposed to be
Awkward.
awkward, right?
Awkward.
Awkward, that's part of his
Yeah.
awkwardness
Oh,
in
where's the
life.
picture
He's
of the
trying to
band?
become
Someone
I
has-
know, it
cooler.
didn't have to be that ugly.
And if you
It
can
doesn't
see
be
Pete
that ugly.
Townsend, if you can see
Ugly.
Pete
He
Townsend,
was, yeah, he really
Pete
was.
Townsend has a very
He was
large
much
nose, long face.
He really was.
So Pete Townsend had the awkward look.
Well, his personality was ugly.
If he wasn't ugly, he wouldn't be so miserable.
Well, that's.
Right, right, yeah.
I thought he
Oh,
was
no,
ugly.
that's funny. I was
He's not-
thinking
He
that.
wasn't a sexy looking guy.
What I was gonna say was, what was the significance of his friend who was a rocker?
Oh, Kevin.
Is
All right.
that was his name? I
Yes.
saw it a few weeks ago.
So the one that was in the bathtub scene?
Yeah.
Okay,
And they were friends, even
Right.
though they were
yes.
in the different gangs.
They were friends as kids.
You know,
And when Kevin the rocker is singing Bebopalula, I think that was the one he was singing. And Jimmy counters by singing The Kinks,
Mhm.
which the one he was singing, You Really Got Me, is one of Pete Townsend's all-time favorite songs. So that's why they made him pick that one. But it was also significant because that was a song that kind of crossed over when rockers became rock and roll. And it kind of helped cross over with that song. It was one of them.
but it was almost
So-
like a forbidden friendship.
Well, right,
Like
it
a-
was,
yeah.
because when he saw him in his leather, he's
Yeah.
like, what the hell, you know?
Yeah,
And he's happy to eat with him and talk with him and smile, and then he sees someone he knows, and he gets out of the restaurant,
yes,
because he didn't want to be seen with a rocker,
right.
because they were the warring factions.
He did save him at the end, though, right? When he was getting beat up, right?
Sort
Did
of.
he? I don't
Yeah.
remember.
He didn't quite totally say, he said, get off him, but then he left.
Then he left,
Yeah, because he was so upset by
he
this,
left.
he couldn't stay in that situation,
yeah.
because either way, he loses, you know?
I think they beat him up pretty bad still.
Yeah, he definitely got beat up. So, a little bit of trivia, the pinball machine that Jimmy plays in the place is called Buckaroo. It was manufactured by Gottlieb. It's the same machine played by Elton John in the movie Tommy.
Tommy.
I thought that was kind of interesting. Okay, I'm not gonna go into that. Okay, so when director Frank Roddam first met with Pete Townsend, Townsend brought him tapes of orchestral arrangements of the score that he'd produced, assuming the film would be made in the style of a rock opera the way Ken Russell had made Tommy. Roddam explained he wanted to do the complete opposite and make it much more realistic in tone and style. And although the score would still obviously be very prominent and important to the soundtrack, Townsend put the tapes away and never mentioned them again. Before the shooting started, even a month before, several of the main cast were taken to the Metropolitan Police Training College, where they were taught in North London, where they were taught how to ride their scooters properly by a police motorcyclist. The reason was the director wanted them to appear to have the feel like they've lived on these bikes for a long time, like they were a part of them, because it was so integral. During a 40th anniversary cast reunion, the guy who played Ferdy, Trevor Laird, Ferdy was the black pill pusher, recalled that on the day the house party scenes were due to be shot, he arrived on set only to be approached by producer John Peverall carrying a bottle of champagne. He had just won an Oscar for producing The Deer Hunter. Peverall told him, "You're not needed for these scenes, and to stand down and go have a drink with Phil Davis," who played, it was either Spider or Chalky, I'm not sure, who also wasn't in the scenes. The director was angry and confronted the producer, telling him it's not your job to discuss such matters with the cast. But then the director was embarrassed and admitted to Ferdy, Trevor Laird, that he'd been dropped from the scenes for commercial reasons, as the film was going to be seen in the southern states of the United States and South Africa, and those audiences would not accept or tolerate a black man being around or intimate with white girls. So that was the reality of the situation they dealt with.
In the 1980s?
No, well, 79, yeah, when they made the movie, right. Steph was supposed to have a 60s pixie crop like Monkey, but Leslie Ash didn't want to do it, so they went for the Jane Asher style instead. Okay, I told you about that. Oh, the ending. The ending was filmed on the first day of shooting, interestingly enough. I don't know how or
That's
why,
funny.
but the director in a scene for it talked about how they did that shot where the scooter goes over the cliff. And essentially, they sort of used a jerry-rigged slingshot to do it. And he was in a helicopter, and he said the engineers did all the calculations, you know, how far away to be and all that. He said, when it actually happened, the thing came within 10 feet of us. We freaked out, but we got a great shot. But he said, it's coming right at us. We're in the helicopter, the thing's coming right at us. And they were worried it was going to hit them. And he said, you know, we'd never be able to make that today.
I think it's kind of timeless, though, the more I'm thinking about it, the theme, because I think teenagers now struggle with the same issues of
Oh,
fitting
yeah.
in, not knowing
Always.
which group to be in, who are they really, they're getting
Well,
into
that's
drugs,
all
there's a lot of
part
teen
of it.
suicide. So I think this is kind of the same theme now, same
Well,
struggles. that
Interesting you say that,
Forever.
because Cameron Crowe, who made Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Almost Famous, Jerry Maguire, Say Anything, Vanilla Sky, all these big films. But Fast Times at Ridgemont High goes to same kind of thing. Actually, well, it was set in the late, like 79. So when this film came out, it was set, this film was obviously set in
Cameron
63.
Crowe
Your
produced
favorite
Cameron
Les
Crowe.
Mis.
David loves that movie.
No, that's
That's
Cameron
another-
McIntosh.
Oh, it
No,
isn't
Cameron Crowe. So
Oh.
Sean
So
Penn's in
he
that,
said,
right?
yes,
Sean Penn.
right,
Sean
that's
Penn.
the one that launched Sean Penn.
Yeah.
So Cameron Crowe said this was his favorite movie of all time. It was also the first feature-length film of Timothy Spall, who ended up, if you saw The King's Speech, he played Winston Churchill.
Oh,
He was in many, many other movies, but that's the one I remember the most. But he had a small part, if you remember, at the ad agency where Jimmy was the mail boy, when they're in the film room, and they're yelling, "Can you roll it again, please?" And he goes,
Oh.
"Ah." He's playing cards, he just hits the button. The guy who hits the button, that's Timothy Spall, who ended up playing Churchill years later. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, but I told Ed, I thought it's a lot like Saturday Night Fever. It's like,
Right,
it's these kids who have like menial jobs, but
Right.
their
Yeah.
whole life is going out on Saturday
They're
night.
trying to find
know,
more to life
And I
than
thought this monkey was like the
Yeah.
girl who wanted to be in love with.
in West Side Story.
No, monkey,
Hmm.
like the girl who
Saturday
wanted to be in
Night
love
Fever.
with John
Oh, that
Travolta,
Right.
who
was Saturday
only
Night
wanted-
Fever.
But
right,
John
right, right.
Travolta was
Right.
a lot cute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
well, also, that's an American movie, so they're gonna,
There was a lot-
Hollywood it up.
and
you
the-
know?
And the music was great in Saturday Night
That's
Fever.
right. That's
But-
right.
But at some point, he realizes that that's not real life and has to,
Right.
if he wants that girl, the dancing girl, to
Steph,
accept
her
him,
name
he
was
has to get a
Steph,
real
yeah.
job, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Now-
Yeah,
think, I
same
think
thing,
for
same
me, I really connected with the characters of these other movies that you mentioned, but I had trouble connecting and feeling and caring about the characters in this movie.
Because it
Well,
was so
the-
chaotic. I
Well, it was chaotic, but
So
also the
chaotic.
characters were all pretty self-absorbed. I mean, even look at the incident where I think it was Spider was the one whose bike stalled or whatever, and then the gang caught up with him. So his friends, they were going to beat him up, but they kind of ran him off the road and he crashed.
Yeah,
You remember?
and then they left him.
And they kind of left him. They're sort of joking, like, "You're okay, all right, broken bones. Okay, bye. We'll see you." He's like, "Wait a minute. What if his bike didn't work?"
Yeah.
He stopped.
that was
They just left
weird.
him.
They're not such
So
good
they're not such good
Not
friends, you
such
know?
good friends.
Right.
Like they didn't care.
It's
Right.
a facade,
Right.
yeah.
That was what I kind of thought was that. So now, if you remember the character of Dave, the actor's name is Mark Wingett. He was actually 16 when shooting this movie. I couldn't believe it because he looked older to me, but he was only 16.
Which one? The one
Dave,
that got left?
no, the one who took the girlfriend at the end, Steph at the end, the one that had the hat a lot. So he turned up on set one day with a huge love bite on his neck, earning him a major dressing down from the assistant director. The 16-year-old Wingett decided to quit the film, but director Frank Roddam was determined to keep him. He persuaded him to stay by giving him a shirt once owned by Sid Vicious, which Vicious had vomited all over, and it still had the stains.
Ah,
He got it after he visited Johnny Lydon, this is the director, and Lydon had hit him with an axe. And he still wanted him to be in the movie. How about that? Roddam paused and said he hoped he kept it because it's probably worth a fortune now. That shirt, because Sid Vicious ended up dying just a few years after this. Okay. Oh, the scene where Jimmy and his mates are on the bikes overlooking the sea and the pier, and Jimmy says, that is Brighton. It's actually Eastbourne. That's why it says Beachy Head is on their right when it should be on their left if they were in Brighton. Okay, so you saw the Who, they appeared on the TV when Jimmy's watching the TV and his father comes in like, what the hell is that? So that was a Ready, Steady, Go. And you also saw in his room, besides all the naked girls on the wall, he had a portrait of Pete Townsend and a poster of the Who.
I didn't see that place very fast.
Is that in
Yeah.
the-
Barely
did
had
she
time to see it.
commit suicide, the girl?
No.
She did.
She just had sex with all the guys in the car because she wanted to.
Right.
That's right.
She wanted to be with.
Someone committed suicide. Yeah.
Saturday Night
Didn't
Fever?
someone jump off a bridge?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
His friend.
Yes.
Yeah, his friend.
Yes,
Yes.
that's, yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Jumped
little,
off the
a little,
Brooklyn
right.
Bridge.
Right.
little.
So
short one.
yeah,
I
so
remember
again,
that, yeah.
that goes to
Yeah.
what Roger Daltrey was
Yeah.
concerned about, that
Yeah.
people thought would think they were stealing with the suicide.
Yeah.
Now, the woman who was
Right,
cast as
right.
Jimmy's mother was originally Amanda Barry, and she had actually completed some photography. The director stated they did a Criterion collection of the DVD for the director's commentary. He said he found her unsuitable for the role and had her recast. The woman who was cast as at the last minute as Jimmy's mother was Kate Williams. And then I love the scene where Jimmy's had a horrible day. He comes in and she starts yelling at him, getting in his face. Literally, the director shifts the point of view to Jimmy's point of view, and you see her yelling at you as the viewer. You remember that scene? And she's saying it's not normal, you know, and he's like, well, what is normal then?
It's normal, yeah.
Because he didn't know. He genuinely didn't know. And that was part of his issue.
I thought the parents were pretty good.
The father was.
The father was
Yeah.
okay,
The
yeah.
father was
The mother
nicer
was
than the
not.
mother, yeah.
Yeah.
The
I
father
think
was,
I think they probably took him back at the end if he got a job.
Right, that's right, yeah.
yeah.
So the guy who played Jimmy's father, Michael Elphick, was Jimmy's father. He was in fact only 12 years older than Phil Daniels when they were shooting it. So I thought that was interesting too.
I would hope that the father took the parents took him back.
Right.
That was disconcerting when they did that.
All right, anyone have any other thoughts? Anyone? So David, you liked it. I mean, I liked it a lot. I thought it was very well done, but there were parts that were, you know, tough to watch and disappointing because he makes such bad choices so often. But that's part of it, and that's part of his affliction, and he talks about it. You know, he feels like the world is going backwards, or you know, and Steph says to him, maybe it's you that's going backwards, when she's yelling at him to, you know, F off and go away. Okay. Oh, the scene in Brighton where there was the parade going through. So they didn't have a big enough budget to clear the streets. So that was just happening, and they said, we're shooting with it. They didn't have a permit. They just did the best they could, and we're hoping they weren't going to get in trouble. They were risking it because they said the budget wouldn't have allowed to clear the whole streets of Brighton by the beach, and so they just kind of worked with it. So that was a little bit improvised there.
I get a kick out of watching Sting dance. I thought that was hysterical.
Oh, I'm glad you said that because they talked about that on in the 40th year cast reunion when they did this video. I don't know if it was Monkey or Phil Daniels who said he couldn't dance at all.
Yeah.
And
It's
and they
really
said,
funny.
and he goes, well, but you see him. He goes, yeah. He says, you see him from the waist up,
He was doing this or something,
Yeah.
right? It was really funny.
trying to be cool. And they tried.
Trying to-
They showed the choreographer trying to work with him, and he was just so stiff.
He was so
He
stiff.
was so stiff.
I was.
So yeah,
That
it was
supposed
kind
to
of
be
funny,
like that.
That was,
right? Because he was supposed to be the cool guy,
was it supposed to be
but
like that?
dancing,
I don't know.
you know.
I don't know.
That thing
So-
stands down the whole crowd.
Yeah, so that kind of helped launch Sting, and that was kind of interesting. Anyway, and I saw him years later on Broadway in Three Penny Opera,
Oh.
which it was not a great production, but he did a good job. He did a good job.
Oh, wow.
So anyone have any thoughts? Any other thoughts? Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
All right. Does anyone have maybe a better appreciation of the movie now, or you didn't like
It
it?
makes it much better when you talk about it.
Yeah, not really, no. Okay.
No, it makes it much better. It's a more understanding of it.
it's not such an odd theme. I mean, it's
It's
reoccurring.
Well, the theme is
reoccurring.
Yeah.
Even today.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
in
what
the
it
nineties, there was
today.
the movie
Yes.
Dazed and
Yes.
Confused, covered
Yeah.
similar stuff with the kids all using drugs and drinking and everything. And of course, that's
It's the
Heinz
human
Ritzmann.
condition of teenagers.
Yeah.
And you
It's,
just
you
don't-
know, sad. It's a hard time of
If we
life.
made
It's
the
tough
movie,
for kids.
if we
Very
made the
tough.
movie now, we'd show us yelling at our kids to put their phone down.
Yes.
Yeah, right. I always
Yes.
just
Or you
made it
take
up.
away the phone, instead of when you hit the
Yes.
air, and then you say you take away the phone.
So there was also the casual racism in the film too, a little bit, where they made slang expressions when they were looking for Ferdy to try to get the drugs, and his mom wasn't there, and it's like Chalky, I think, was the guy who made some nasty comments. But there was some humor that they injected into it. The scene where he's singing in the bathtub
Oh,
on the other side,
yeah.
and they're ready to get to fight each other. And they're like, "Oh, hey, how you doing? We're buddies," you know. So that was funny. And then the scene when
Yeah.
Jimmy's trying to find Ferdy, and the mother yells, "He not here!" and slams the window down. And then he sees the guy in the street, and the guy says, "Oh, you're looking for Ferdy, right?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "He not here." Thanks, real helpful, you know. So
That was a little humor.
yes, right. They put a little
And
humor
a
in it.
moment
Exactly.
of humor.
I mean, in some ways, I think it's harder to grow up now. It's harder for kids now, I think.
Yeah, well, and the
This-
pandemic adds a whole other layer to it.
Without
yeah.
the pandemic,
Even without the pandemic.
just in
There's
general.
too many options,
It's harder to be.
too many options.
All right, well, I'll stop the recording now. Again, save the dates for December 1st, and you'll get to vote on that. I'll send an email in the next couple of weeks. And then we'll be back on the 26th is after that. And we got the theater outing November 9th for Jersey Boys.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's say.
Are you going to
Those people.
Jersey Boys?
No, because we've seen it twice.
I've seen it twice.
So
Bye, guys.
we decided, yeah,
Anyway.
so